Hello, new interns. We are back, and today we're going to be interviewing Maci Wolf. Now, Maci is a sales and marketing intern for Join, but we're going to learn a lot more about that through the course of this interview, and she'll share with us. But first things first, I want to know, Maci, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, just
Hanging in there.
yeah, definitely.
Great, great. So we're going to go ahead and get started and ask, Macy, I'd like to know, where do you currently go to school? What's your major and what's your expected grad date?
Yeah, so I will be graduating from St. Mary's College of California, end of January.
Okay,
And so around then, and then my major is business administrations with a concentration in marketing.
I love that. And, in your free time, when being a full-time student and working, I'm sure doesn't afford you too much time, but what do you like to do, uh, you know, when you do have free time? Do you have any hobbies or any big time wasters? What do you like doing?
Yeah, so right now, currently besides juggling school and my internship, I go to the gym as frequently as I can. I'm also a part-time content creator on TikTok too. So it does take up a lot of my time, especially with collabs and everything of that sense. So pretty busy.
Wow, okay, that was definitely a curveball. I would love to know more about that later for sure. And
Yeah.
I referenced the people. If you're watching this, I referenced TikTok. I mentioned to Macy that she could, if she had any time wasters like social media, like TikTok. But that's definitely not a time waster in the capacity that you're using it. So I just want to let you know I did not mean that.
No, it does take up a lot of time. And it's like, I always see people talking like, oh, like being a content creator, like isn't hard. Or it's like,
Oh, it
yeah, but
totally is.
yeah. And it's like, especially because like right now, going to school full time, have a part-time internship, and then I also have another job working at a gym as well. And then so
Oh,
like, doing everything like that, it's hard at the
yeah,
end of the day just to like make me time.
yeah. Well, that's really cool that you're pursuing all these things at once. So Macy, can you tell us what is your current title in the internship that you're in? And what company are you working for? And kind of who are they? Can you give us some background on that?
Yeah, so like you had mentioned, I'm currently a marketing intern for Join Inc. I started off there as a sales intern and then kind of like transitioned over to the marketing side, with marketing being my concentration, kind of like wanted to dive in and learn more about like what marketing is internally.
Hmm.
And so Join is a pre-construction tech startup out of Oakland, California. It's
Oh,
a decision-making platform for the built environment. So
okay.
by transforming complex data into clear visuals, Join basically empowers stakeholders to make efficient and effective decisions. It's the only software orientation where everyone is around the same actionable information, real-time data, and then the decision history that comes with the pre-construction process.
That's awesome. I actually have not heard of a company like that. So very,
Yeah,
very
it's the first in its industry. So currently no competitors. So it does have that advantage.
sweet. And so in order to get this role, you've been here for a good amount of time, and around 9 months. Is that kind of around? That's
Yeah, it
fantastic.
started back in like February. I want to say it was like my first day. Yeah.
You apply on job sites for this role, or were you able to have maybe a referral from a friend, or did they reach out to you directly? How did you kind of come into this position?
Yeah, so I was brought on to join through a family friend, started, like I said, as a sales intern,
Mhm.
later switched over. And basically, one of my good family friends brought me onto the role. So I didn't use any like job site looking things, but I did apply to a bunch in the process. And so, yeah.
What would you say was the volume? So during this period of applying, now for this one you didn't, but you said you were. Um, did you send out maybe like 10 or 50? How many applications did you send out during this period that you were talking about?
It was a
Or
lot
just
of time. Yeah. I want to say like maybe like 10 to 15
okay.
about. Yeah.
Cool. And so from the moment that you got this role, was there a onboarding process? Like, did you have to go through a phone interview or screening or an in-person interview, or was it more kind of just right in? How was kind of that process?
Yeah, so overall at first, with the family friend that had brought me on, had an interview with him, kind of like to go over, okay, like what are you going to talk about? Like
Yeah.
kind of like a pre-job interview type of thing.
Mhm.
And then after that process, I did go into with the chief of staff, kind of went into that and had the interview with her as well as that family friend, and
Mhm.
did have that whole onboarding process of basically just like a straightforward interview. Was around February. So it was kind of like getting back to that whole in-person
Mhm.
thing. But considering that the joins job is around the United States, most people do work remote. So it was remote.
Sweet. And granted, I know that it sounds like a great opportunity that you were able to capitalize on. Um, Part of these interviews is we like to give the people who watch and read these experiences a realistic view of what it takes to be in this role. So I'm wondering kind of what experience did you go into this role with? Was it kind of on the end where everything's fairly new to you, or do you have anything that was super relevant? Um, yeah, so I just want to know if this position was completely new to you, or if there was something that you had kind of had before that made it more of an option.
Yeah. So like going into joins industry, wasn't exactly sure like what join was, did a bunch of research on it and was still kind of like, okay, like I have no idea what this is. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, so like looking into it, I was like, okay, like I know construction isn't going anywhere. Like people are always building, people are always renovating. And then technology as well, like we're kind of making that shift into the technological aspect of everything. And so I was like, tech's definitely not going anywhere as well. So kind of wanted to learn more about it.
Mhm.
But coming from my background, I would say this was my first internship. So I did learn a lot and I still am learning a bunch.
Yeah.
Kind of like what helped me get my foot in the door, I would say, was that I was coming from, like I'm still working now as a
Mhm.
sales specialist at a gym.
Okay.
So selling memberships, kind of similar, kind of different.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff with putting in data into a database, like as signing someone up for a membership, and then overall just having to talk and communicate with people. So like the whole customer service aspect.
Mhm.
And being that I am an intern, I have to do a lot of communicating with people, like one's assigning me tasks and everything like that. So being able just to communicate like what I'm doing, how I'm doing, and then just like learning from everyone around me really helped as well.
That I actually love that answer because, there's a wide range of interns who we interview. And when you get a lot of them where they say, "Oh, I got my internship because I had about 5 other ones before that," it's like, "Well, that's cool, but, it's good. I like hearing from the people who have their first one and who
Right.
got their foot there in the door for an industry. Those are the people, we're all reading these transcripts, these interviews, because we're hoping to be in your position as well. So thanks for sharing that. That's super realistic, and that's really cool that you got to work for Join.
Yeah.
And so this is a part-time position, correct? Or is it full-time?
Part-time.
Great. Are you working with a cohort of interns, or would you say it's more with like a project manager or a direct superior?
Yeah, so right now I'm really the only intern. I know they had one prior to me,
Mhm.
but considering that they're a startup, it's still small. I think we're under around 75 employees.
Oh,
So
got it.
I am like one of the first few intern.
Okay. That is super cool. I did not know that it was a startup. Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned it earlier, but prior to this, could you give us an overview? We want to go in depth, and there's lots of duties that you might be doing. There's maybe some project related ones, and then of course there's the clerical, the support related tasks. Maybe it's just generally emailing or even copying papers, whatever. Can you give us an overview of what you do in this role? And then afterwards, we can go in depth on something.
Yeah, definitely. So for starters, when I first came in to join, I was on the sales side, like I'd mentioned.
Mhm.
And at first I was tasked with, just helping account executives when it comes to territories. So figuring out, okay, who's going to be talking to who, like you really have to have that establishment of sectoring off different states. So right now we're focused on the United States. And so first I was tasked with separating the United States in a sense in 11 different territories, really helping the account executives figure out, okay, which of these bigger companies do we want to go after first, and then narrowing our search down to smaller companies. And so with that, kind of did like more in-depth research. I was looking at this thing called the AGC 400, which is the top 400 general contractors in the United States. And so narrowing it off of that, just figuring out, okay, these are like the big guys. I mean, obviously they're the top of the general contractors, figuring out those people that we want to target. So the data research that came into that was, finding each individual company, seeing what their net incomes are, how many employees they have, and like how many projects they've worked on, and like their net capital of how much money they've put into projects or something along those lines.
Wow.
And so now after switching over to the marketing side, I've been helping with like event coordination and planning for conferences in the construction industry. So some of those have to do with like Autodesk University, DBIA, LCI, and just everything like along those lines. And so basically just planning eternally, like who's going to these events, what are they doing? And then also getting like lead lists of general contractors or people that we want as leads to be attending those events, and then reaching out to them, making landing pages like on HubSpot, everything like that, as well as drafting up emails. And then at the end of the day, kind of like media post drafts for LinkedIn and everything and whatnot.
Okay, that is awesome. I'm taking some notes here. That's why I keep looking down. Wow, that was super cool because, one of sometimes there's a difficulty with new interns is that maybe they haven't been, it takes time to ramp up your duties and sometimes you don't have a lot to do. That is definitely not the case for what you just described for your role. And I like how you separated it for us, the sales and the marketing part, because you are, you were a sales intern and now you're a marketing intern. I'd love to, okay. When you were separating, now I'm going to go kind of in depth on a bunch of the stuff you mentioned. By separating the US into 11 territories based off big companies, you were evaluating, well, how would you sector? Yeah, I guess we could start there. How would you begin sectoring the US into 11 territories, or was it sectored and then within each territory you just had to explore what are the largest corporations within those? How did that work, and how much research did it take?
Yeah, so I was kind of given some guidance going into it. I know they wanted to try and help me to show, I would say like show some of my own, oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, but just taking control over it. So like me having the upper hand in it almost to a say. So they told me like these states are going in these territories, these ones are going in these. Like for instance, California is actually split in two because of how many general contractors are in California.
Wow.
So they were kind of like divvied up, like obviously the East Coast would have more states in their territories because they're smaller states compared to say California. And so they kind of had some information as to the corporations and stuff they've been working with. And so I was kind of tasked with reorganizing them. So a bunch of work in Excel, just sliding things over, making sure like, say for instance, we had North Carolina and South Carolina together at one point, and then we like divided them into different territories. I'd have to take everything from that North Carolina side to the South Carolina side, or everything like along those lines. So it was a bunch of like moving pieces. And it like looking at my computer for such a long time, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need a break. Like I can't even like Excel just makes your eyes cross sometimes. So, yeah.
And so the AGC 400, is that what it's called? AGC?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's probably that's widely known within the industry, that list.
Right. And like updates every year too, type of thing. Like, is
it made public, or do people have to have a subscription to view that?
I believe it's made public. But then like once you like dive deeper into it, like say you want to try and contact these people, it's like those things I think are public. But I wasn't 100% sure. It was like a couple months ago. That was like my first task when I joined.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And you were, you know, I'd imagine this was a whole nother project and a whole nother Excel sheet where you were having to track individual profiles of companies. Was that just a massive volume of researching and transferring info? Is that kind of what that was?
Yeah, so it's like we had a general's playbook and then it had like everyone. And then it's like on another sheet, it was like hop down to another file and it was territory 1, territory 2, 3, all the way down to 11. And then in that was like separate things. And then so like it was a bunch of pieces having like a million tabs open on my computer and just like having to
Wow.
regroup on like what I'm doing and like making sure like I was doing each section. So it's like I even had like a notebook down, like crossing off like, okay, California's done, I'm pretty sure. And then like just going through and then at the end, like it was like funneling down into smaller pieces. And then it was like, boom, just like one day I was like done and I was like, am I sure I'm done? Like, oh, like it was a lot.
Was it, before I get into the marketing part of your internship, was there a steep learning curve where, you were like, I don't know if I can do this, or would you say you picked it up really, really quickly? How stressful was it? How did you manage that?
So one of the things that like I was just always told is that if you need help, ask for it. Like you're here to learn. You're not here just to do tasks for us and to at the end of the day say you were an intern. Like the whole purpose of one is to learn. And
Mhm.
so like we use Slack for our communicating and I was just using Slack. So
Sorry, I think I disconnected for a moment. You mentioned, yes, you were using Slack so that was a comforting option that you had.
yeah, and then so just to always relaying like if I had any questions, like are we using this? Like, is this still prevalent in what we're doing type of stuff? So that was really helpful, just always asking um for clarification.
That's awesome. Now, in your in your marketing sided role, event coordination, it's funny because we actually had someone from Autodesk, another intern. So that's cool that you mentioned that they're one of the people that you plan on having. What when you have to plan an entire event, what does that look like? And if you could kind of reiterate what types of events are these? You're hosting what kinds of companies, and what's the extent to which you're, gathering all these people?
Yeah, so I'm actually not so when we have an event, so like I mentioned Autodesk University, which is happening or did happen. What we do is like we're attending them. And
Mhm.
so I'm internally doing everything for join in registering people. So registering couple people like our account executive, someone from the marketing team, and
Uh,
then like our evangelists. So signing up, registering those people, and then having to jump into like a comms doc and put all the information that the event's given us. So like booth setup, arrival times of join employees,
mhm.
as well as if we have like a speaking slot, if we're hosting event inside of that. So I know our evangelist always does speaking events at the conferences that we go to.
Yeah.
So again, so it's like diving into that and it's reaching out to people like, hey, come watch this. Like, are you going to be attending this conference?
Uh-huh.
Um, like, come stop by our speaking events, have so stuff like that. And then just like everything in the comms doc leading to like LinkedIn posts. So like drafting things up for say the events on a Friday, just writing everything down, like looking forward to our last day and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. So you'll actually write or draft the direct copy for posts.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh man, are there other people who help you with the post, or do you?
Yeah. So the person I work under, the head of marketing, she like proofread them all and like make sure they're okay or tweaks them to an extent. But I'm basically just putting down all that information and say like we have one of our partners, so someone who uses Join, coming to the event. We'll even do like a little shout out on LinkedIn, be like, make sure to stop by so and so's booth, like one of the Join employees or some or not Join employees, Join partners, like someone who's bought into Join. So it's pretty interesting.
Wow, I love that. And I love the way you explained it because it is high stakes. You can't, you're in your role, you can't mess up. All that information that you're having to keep track of and signing up certain people. I can't imagine yeah, it, it, there's a lot of liability that comes with needing to keep track of all these things.
Right.
That is a lot, Macy. Seriously. And I think that's so cool that this is your first internship and that it's a very involved one and that you're not just bringing coffees, to people, which is fine too.
Yeah.
But great. I'd like to ask, I have a couple more questions before we wrap this up. I'm wondering if what you think is what's the most valuable thing that you've learned so far in your internship working with Join?
I would say like being that my internship is remote now, just kind of always like that communication aspect of it. I would say like I'm leaning towards like the other day because I'm coming up on graduating. I brought up the question of does this internship like have the potential to leading into a job? And so they answered, I feel like how like most people would answer, it's like yes. And the head of marketing was helping me. She was really giving me some pointers, basically like slowing down on some work, like taking your time. It's better to take more time and finish a project well than rushing through and showing all these errors.
Yeah.
Because when you're working internally and like you say, you send out a newsletter, something's misspelled or like a letter's accidentally capitalized, it like that takes away from like your authority, like me
Yeah.
showing that I'm having that professional aspect to me. So it's really just like slowing down and everything like that, and then taking more authority in like things that I'm doing. So like asking questions that I don't have to relay through the head of marketing, asking them just overall in a Slack group chat and everything like that. So it's just having that overall objective and taking more action in certain tasks.
Fantastic. And if you were able to, if someone wanted to go into a very similar position as you or a similar internship, what advice would you have for them? Some brief advice for them to be able to do that.
Yeah. Aside from always taking your time, communication is key. I've had a couple of tasks where say they needed to be done on a certain date and I wasn't able to just because things happening like in my everyday life, whether it be school, or just like taking time for my own mental health, just communicating that like they'll understand like you're here to learn. And as much as you want to be treated as an equal during an internship, you are still learning, like you are there part-time compared to them working full-time. So there's been times like when people have reached out to me like, hey, do you have this yet? And I'm just like, yeah, like I'll get it to you by end of the day. Like I'm currently in class right now. And then they'll get back, like they're understanding, like you're in college, they've all been there. You're also working a job. And it's like, I get these people have tighter like time frames than me. And so just overall, again, that communicating, or if like something you're confused about, always ask for help.
Great. Great. Thank you for sharing. So if anyone wants to reach Maci, we are going to include her LinkedIn. And if she has any other links that she would like to include, then you'll see those as well. But for now, Maci, I'd love to stay connected. This was an awesome interview. I actually really feel like I learned a ton about your role and what you've done.
Awesome.
And that's the whole point of this. So it was definitely a success. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. But we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Of course. Yeah. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.